Lake State College Democrats. I'm thrilled to be co-hosting this event today along with Lon Johnson to discuss a very important issue for our community and our planet. We have a few speakers lined up for you today, including Jay Gage, a Sault Ste. Marie City Commissioner, Kathy Brosemer, the Environmental Manager for the Sioux Tribe Chippewa Indians, Chairman Aaron Paymont, and Lon Johnson. Before I begin though, I'd like to say a few words. I will start by admitting that 1 year ago today, I did not know the Line 5 pipeline even existed. I do, however, remember the day I found out. I was absolutely shocked that 28 million gallons of oil flows through the Straits of Mackinac every single day. When I started with Lake State College Democrats, I was looking to gain political experience and get involved in my community, so I was honored and excited when Lon Johnson campaign offered me a chance to participate in this great cause. But I'm not just here today as the president of the College Democrats. I'm a lifelong Michigan resident. As a boy, I played and camped on our Great Lakes, and as a young man, I had dreams that my future children will play on those same lakes. Also, as a United States Marine Corps veteran, I know too well the sacrifices that were made to protect our home. Also, while in the military, I learned a very valuable concept, and that was to always leave a place better than I found it. Although back then that usually consisted of sweeping, dusting, and a good mom. Today we are faced with a 65-year-old pipeline, 500,000 barrels of oil a day, flowing through 21% of the Earth's fresh water. In my lifetime, fresh water will become the most valuable resource in the entire world, and I don't care how much oil you have, you cannot drink it. An oil leak in the Great Lakes will be devastating to our community, our state, our country, and our planet. The devastation would affect generations to come. Yet we are expected to trust the word of the oil company responsible for the largest oil spill in U.S. history when they say the pipeline is safe. We are expected to believe the word of the same government officials who told us the Flint water was safe when they say this pipeline is safe. Well, I believe we have the right to be a little skeptical. I believe we have the right to err on the side of caution, and I know we have the right to protect our home. That is why I agree with Lon Johnson. The Line 5 pipeline needs to be shut down and independently inspected to ensure that we are actually safe. And I look forward to hearing him speak more about this later on in the event. Our first speaker for tonight has been a friend of mine for quite a long time. I remember when I was 18 and 19 years old, and when most people my age were being normal teenagers, me and Jay Gage wrote knocking on doors in Sault Ste. Marie, asking people how we can improve our home. Absolutely. Sault Ste. Marie is lucky to have a city commissioner who cares as much as Jay Gage. Everybody, Jay Gage.
Well, I certainly want to clear something up. I don't deserve nearly as much praise as Billy just gave. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today as a city commissioner of one of Michigan's oldest city and one of the country's oldest cities. First off, I just want to say thank you to Billy for organizing this and for those remarks. It's incredible to see the spectrum of people that have called me as a city commissioner to ask about Line 5 and ask about what the city of Sault Ste. Marie is doing in regards to it. I mean, it ranges from anybody to Billy's age to I had a 5-year-old girl whose grandmother is taught her right, come up to me in a store and says, "What are you going to do about the Straits?" And I was like, well, now I'm going to do something. I mean, you're 5, you know? It's crazy. One of the things that has scared me the most as a city commissioner is when you turn on the news and if you follow politics as much as I do, imagining the terror that would go through my mind as a city commissioner if I was representing a city like Flint. To wake up one day and to find out that for months and months and months and years, something terrible has been happening and you didn't know about it and you didn't do anything about it and you couldn't do anything about it. When that story broke and when that sort of thing happened, my first call was to our DPW director to ask how many lead pipes do we have in the city, how many lead joints do we have, and what are we doing to make sure that this doesn't happen in my town? You know, we have an old town, old infrastructure, we better know. darn it, you know. And so if we're giving that much attention to something that's, you know, underground, silent, out of sight, out of mind, and it's hurting people, why then is it so hard for us to wrap our minds around 65-year-old pipe that's corroding in the heart of our Great Lakes, in a state whose slogan is pure Michigan? Why then is it so hard for us to get behind that and to think about that and to talk about that? It's not a silent issue. Flint, they didn't, you know, I mean, there was this and that, it was quiet. No one really fully knew the impact. We have concrete facts that show us the impact of what happens if there's a compromise. Concrete facts that show us that improvements and maintenance haven't been done properly, haven't been done right. And boy howdy, am I scared about that. And it drives me nuts when I talk to folks locally who are like, well, let the company handle it. You know, they've got experts, they know what they're doing. Don't you just get meddling, you know, you're just a city commissioner. Well, zoinks, I'm a vocal city commissioner, and I plan on being here for 65 years. At 26 years young, I have a long future ahead of me. The thing I don't want the most is to have the Great Lakes, our one big natural resource that defines us as a state, to be compromised in any way. We used to admire people. We used to admire people like Bert Stupak and gave them titles like Guardian of the Great Lakes. What's happening now? Not much, unfortunately. We've got a couple of soft pieces of legislation, and you know, certainly we got to give them the chance to fix it and stuff like that. It's their pipeline. But they need to be held accountable. There needs to be oversight. There needs to be people asking the questions, demanding answers. And so that's why I'm appreciative of having you guys here today, appreciative of being a part of this group, so I can hear from you guys and take that to other folks that are higher up in the political food chain than I. So I'm primarily here to listen and to learn and to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Our next speaker is the environmental manager for the Sioux Tribe of Chippewa Indians, and she'll be giving us a presentation. Kathleen Russell.
Thanks, Bill. I have to say, I'm really impressed when a politician says zoinks.
I'm 26, right?
I'll say jinkies later.
Okay. Recommended setting.
Okay, and you're good.
Oh, nobody wrote it off. Slideshow. I don't know where the slideshow.
Did you hit F5? Or no, it's right in the middle on the top, right there. It says slideshow. Up with that one. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, I'm the environmental manager for the Sioux Tribe, and I've been since May of 2010. In July of 2010, the pipeline blew up down in Marshall, Michigan, and so that kind of got us all going, what the heck, and very similar to your response to Flint, as the environmental manager for a tribe, I'm thinking, what if it happened on tribal lands? And everybody would be looking at me, we've got to get prepared. But the other thing that happened at this same time is that a lot of people started looking for other pipelines as well around the region. And so the fact that you didn't know about this pipeline until recently, almost nobody knew about this pipeline until quite recently, because it was after the Kalamazoo spill that everybody started to say, well, where are the pipelines around the Great Lakes? And the National Wildlife Federation did us all a favor by zeroing in on this one. So I apologize to the Sioux Tribe board members who are here who've already seen this PowerPoint. You'll be a little bit bored, but it's the same one basically. The pipeline at the Straits is run by Enbridge, It's a Canadian corporation that operates the world's longest and most complex hazardous liquids transportation system. Over 25,000 kilometers, over 15,000 miles of crude oil pipelines across North America. The Line 5 system is part of what they call the Lakehead system. It originates at Duluth, or Superior, Wisconsin. And I'll show you a map of that. So here is Line 5, starting up at Duluth, running across the top of Wisconsin and then the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then coming across and down to exit at Sarnia and to go back into Canada. And the other parts of the Lakehead system come down this way and then go over here. And it's this yellow one that blew up in Marshall, Michigan and dumped oil into the Kalamazoo River. So when that happened, when that happened, of course, it happened here, and then people started looking, and you start looking, okay, down here, it's kind of close to the Great Lakes. Over here, it probably a burst would drain into the Great Lakes. Certainly over here, it's crossing waterways that are part of the Great Lakes system. But here is a biggie. Right along here, Line 5 runs right along the Great Lakes. A burst there would end up in the Great Lakes. And then starting about here, this entire stretch of it, a burst would end up in the Great Lakes. So that's what got people alarmed. But the one that made everybody start shaking their heads is, it's already in the Great Lakes for 5 miles at the Mackinac Straits. So there's absolutely no way of keeping it out of the Great Lakes if there's a burst right there. So that's what got the attention right after the Kalamazoo spill. Pipelines don't have a great record. They are touted as the safest way to move oil. However, they're between the first decade of this century, there were more than 2,500 significant incidents with 161 fatalities and 576 other injuries within the United States in a 10-year period. On average, there's a significant pipeline incident every 30 hours in the U.S. The Enbridge spill, it got everybody's attention. This is the pipe, the actual pipe that they pulled out. That's where it's split apart. And I'm going to be talking about the disbonded polyethylene coating of the pipe. That's what you're seeing here. It's like a cloth that was stuck to the outside of the pipe to coat it. It was supposed to be corrosion resistant, but when it separates, when it disbonds from the metal of the pipeline, then it actually keeps moisture in there and creates corrosion hazard. So that was the problem. This was also a slightly different type of pipeline than what we have at the MAC. This actually has a seam, a welded seam in the pipe. The pipes under the MAC don't have that side seam. They're a seamless tube, but they're only 50 feet long, so there's welds at the butt ends of these pipes every 50 feet for 5 miles, so you can do the math. There's an awful lot of those welds. What happened at Enbridge? On July 25th, 2010, almost 6 o'clock in the evening, that was a Sunday, the pipe seam ruptured where this pipe crossed Talmadge Creek, which is a tributary to the Kalamazoo River. I will show you ground zero in a minute. The alarms at Edmonton, Alberta, the control center for Enbridge, sounded and were ignored for 17 hours. Basically, they thought that there was a malfunction in their alarm system. They thought maybe there was an air bubble in the line. They actually increased the pressure from time to time to try and clear this. And it was they basically took no action that was indicated by a spill for more than 17 hours. There's ground zero. That's right here is the pipeline. This is the piece that burst. Over here you see oil all over the place. There's oil all over the place. There's oil everywhere. This whole region was just covered in oil. EPA was the lead response agency. About 18 hours after the rupture, Enbridge notified the local fire people, and it took another hour for them to find the spill. Of course, everybody could smell oil in the area, but actually find the spot was a problem. The initial spill report was for 843,000 gallons spilled. That was increased a little bit. Estimates brought it up to about 1.1 million gallons that were ultimately spilled there. Significantly, Enbridge did not notify the EPA that the pipe at the time was carrying diluted bitumen. This is tar sands oil. It's so thick and so heavy that they have to add naphtha and heat it to get it to flow through the pipes. And it made a totally different cleanup. Yes?
You said that it took 18 hours for them to locate and stop the flow. Who actually stopped it?
At the control center in Edmonton.
Okay, so the fire department locally didn't have anything to do with stopping?
They
had no
were just
ability?
on the site. But because it was dill bit, it was a type of cleanup that had never before been seen at that scale. And it's a different kind of oil. It's heavy, it's thick, it's viscous, it settles in water, it doesn't necessarily float. Parts of it, the parts that are the diluents float or evaporate, but the tar sands oil sinks and tar balls are formed, etc. So it's a completely different type of cleanup. The costs exceeded $1 billion and they're still counting. It's not entirely cleaned up yet. This is the most costly inland cleanup in U.S. history. Here's another image of cleanup that was on this is 2 weeks later on one of the banks of the stream. The Kalamazoo River flows west toward Lake Michigan. If you do the hand thing, it's there and it flows over towards Lake Michigan. A 40-mile reach of the river was contaminated. This had been a lovely recreational stream. Lots of meanders, lots of wetlands, lots of places where people could swim or fish. So it was just a lovely little stream. And the oil ended up being contained at the Mara Lake Dam, 80 miles upstream of the mouth of the Kalamazoo as it enters Lake Michigan. That was the spot that EPA identified as soon as they knew about it. They have to stop it at the Mara Lake Dam. They can't let it get past the Mara Lake Dam because there was no other obvious place beyond that where they could have stopped it and kept it from getting into Lake Michigan. So that was the goal they set, and they made that goal. But the 40-mile reach that was contaminated upstream of the Mara Lake Dam was just filled with bays, islands, marshlands, oxbows, and the river also happened to be at its 25-year flood stage when this happened, so there was overbank contamination as well. The oil just went out over the sides of the river. There is one dam. This is an upstream dam. It's not the Mara Lake Dam, and you can see the sheen on the water here. Regulatory actions. EPA ordered Enbridge to clean it up. The order was dated July 27th, 2 days after the spill. There were hundreds of workers involved. The Department of Transportation fined Enbridge, listed 22 violations, most of those in the control room in Edmonton. Literally called Enbridge Keystone Cops in their report. And they blamed it on the disbonded polyethylene tape. But they also identified that Enbridge had known since 2005 of 15,000 defects in that pipeline. And yes, they knew about cracks, they knew about corrosion, they knew about places where the coating had been disbonded. That's why they were fined, because it was a completely inept process of control. So returning north, talking about this now, same company, older pipeline, slightly different structure. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. At the Matt Straits, their line 5 carries light sweet crude and sour crude from Superior, Wisconsin to Sarnia. Across, as I showed you, across the Upper Peninsula and then down the Lower Peninsula, those places it is one 30-inch pipe. But when it gets to St. Ignace from the Upper Peninsula, they split it into two 20-inch pipes. They run it 1,000 feet apart down through the straits, and then at Mackinac City, they can combine it again into a 30-inch pipe again. If you do the area math, you'll see that two 20-inch pipes carries the same volume as a 30-inch pipe. So, but it was installed in 1953 with a 50-year design life. Under the water at any given time, there's 1 million gallons of oil. That's as much as spilled in 17 hours of flow into the Kalamazoo. At any given time, there's 1 million gallons under the straits, which means on a daily basis, there's about 23 million gallons. They're pumping 1 million gallons an hour through that. So if they pumped for 17 hours there would be 17 million gallons. In 2013, after the pipe that was designed for 50 years was 60 years old, they did install a pressure drop sensor at the north end of the straits just to let them know if there was a problem. Mackinac Channel, this is an interesting map because it's a little different than what you normally see. Usually when you look at everyday maps, the land is what has the colors and the water is all one color because you're driving and you're not going to be going into the water. This is the reverse. This is a bathymetric map. So the land is gray. We don't care about the land here. There's the Lower Peninsula, there's Beaver Island, there's the Upper Peninsula, there's St. Ignace. The channel here, through here, is an old drowned river valley The red color is shallow water, yellow color is deeper water. We're down to about 100 meters there where it's yellow-green. In this channel of the straits, it is 295 feet deep. If oil got into there that didn't float, the kind that sinks, the tar balls, we'd never get it. At the Mac Straits, National Wildlife Federation and University of Michigan collaborated on a simulation of what would happen to oil spills in the straits. Think about Lakes Michigan and Lake Huron. They're basically one lake. They're the same level. The water equalizes in the two. If there's a low pressure on one side, the water will flow from the other lake into that one, etc. And so you end up with water flowing back and forth, sort of sloshing like a bathtub across the straits. And you'll see that in the simulation when I'm running for you. We know that under the current regulatory environment, there is no way that Enbridge would be allowed to replace that line there at the straits. Anybody looks at that now with 2016 eyes would say, that is the stupidest place on this earth to put a pipeline. No one would ever allow it. So Enbridge does not want to take it out. They don't want to, they know they can't replace it, they don't want to lose it. They're making money, they don't want to lose it. They have said to the Pipeline Task Force, they intend to run it indefinitely. No agency would approve crossing 5 miles of the Great Lakes with an oil pipeline now. It can only be decommissioned. The question is before or after it ruptures. There are only two possible fates for this pipeline. It's going to be stopped, one way or the other. It's going to be either stopped after it explodes or before. There's a simulation that I'm going to run for you, if this will connect. It's not running. It's this is a still.
Click on the picture.
Let's see if I can get this to work. No.
Oh.
So this is a still from the simulation, and I'm going to try and run it for you again a different way. But this, the yellow is at mid-depth, the blue is deeper, and the red is the surface. And this is after 11 days after a 12-hour release of oil from the center of the straits. It's been sloshing back and forth and separating into these fractions of lighter, medium, and heavy. And it's basically the lighter stuff has coated the islands, it's coated the intakes, and the heavier stuff is floating around where we have beautiful fisheries that we would like to protect. Pump and pray is not how we protect the Great Lakes. So I'm going to see if I can start that simulation, but meanwhile, do you want to?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Going back to how they stop it. I know they're in the control room, they turn the valve off. Are there no periodic valves or stops throughout
Yes.
and so how did they end up stopping Kalamazoo? Was there a periodic
They shut them down. They shut down the They can shut them
intermittent
down.
valves?
Yeah, they can shut any of those valves down remotely from Edmonton,
And where is the closest valves to Mackinac Straits?
right at the north end of the strait.
And at the south end as well?
Yes.
So they can isolate that.
Yes. Presuming they take action in a timely fashion. And if they don't believe their instruments, if they're trying to push oil, and if there's ice over the straits and nobody sees the oil right away, it might take a while before they take action.
Are those valves controllable only from Edmonton?
I think that they probably have a couple of different routes of control, but I couldn't speak to that directly. You'd have to ask
Like,
Enbridge.
so if say a fire department locally or some emergency service were to identify it, they would not necessarily be able to shut it off locally.
I don't know. I would think that they would put that in their emergency response plan from Edmonton, that locals would have the ability and the right or the training to do it. I don't know though. I haven't read it. I would certainly think that they need to. That would be a prudent thing to put in an emergency response plan.
Just prior to the Kalamazoo River Enbridge spill, the Enbridge told Congress that they had automatic shut-off valves, and they touted that as a way that they could control the spill. We're being told the exact same thing right now, that there's automatic shut-off valves that would stop the flow of oil. And again, you trust them? Do you believe that? And we heard the same thing. That's the exact same thing we heard out of Enbridge just days before the Kalamazoo River
We
spill.
have no proof of the automatic shut-off, but we do have proof of not having an automatic shut-off.
Yeah, we've seen.
One of the striking things after this happened is my friend Mark Schauer, who was congressman at the time, took the leadership and held several congressional hearings and exposed citation after citation after citation that Enbridge failed to follow the safety checks, they failed to comply. They accepted the small little fines as a result of failing to comply. So this was known that this was going to happen. It was anticipated this was going to happen. And they flouted the regulations as they currently exist and allowed it to happen as a cost calculation because it's cheaper for them to let it happen and pay the fines and hope that it isn't going to happen overall. But even when it happens overall, the cost of cleanup is small compared to the cost of the industry.
Eric, my presentation is done. I'm just going to let this play in the background. If you want to come up and speak,
Sure.
that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Ani, bonjour. Iwaki Jigadishna Kas, Mako Magizi and Dodum, Outing and Donjaba, Nishnabe, Ojibwe, Odawa, Otawatami and Dow. My name is Aaron Payman. I'm the chairperson of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, and I'm also the chair of the Chippewa-Ottawa Resource Authority, which is an intertribal governmental body over our 1836 treaty waters, which is right in the center. This is right in the center of our treaty territory. I want to recognize my cohort on our treaty committee, and that's Levi Carrick, who's the president of Bayliss Indian Community. I'm really happy that you're here. I also want to recognize my council members that are here. Kathy Abramson is here. DJ Hoffman is here. Kim Gravel is here. So we have a really strong showing from our council here. We also have our health director here, Bonnie Kalpa, who is our health director overall. But I also, because if you're interested, I want you to be part of this team. I want to give a recognition to some candidates that are running for Unit 1. And Sam Gardner is here, and Angie Rudd is here, and Mike McCurchie is here, and Nicole Cosley is here, and also Bonnie Kalpa, who's running in Unit 3, is here. And so this is an issue that's very important to us. We haven't heard a lot coming from some members of our council, and so I'm really grateful that those council members are here today. I lived through the Enbridge spill at Kalamazoo River while I served as the executive director for the local tribe there. There were several warning signs and failed safety checks that went unheeded. In fact, after the spill started, it was allowed to go on again for 17 hours unabated as the company claimed they thought it was a false alarm. For 17 hours, the response was chaotic and the outcome devastating, as it's expected to take over 100 years to return the ecology to what it was like before the spill. After activists began exposing the threat of Line 5 to the Great Lakes, the governor was forced to do something. So he created a commission or study group, I believe, as a delay tactic. I repeatedly urged the governor during our monthly calls with the governor's office in consultation on Line 5 to correct his slight of tribes, because he created a study commission that didn't include any Indians on that, and certainly, and even to today, none of the treaty water tribal chairs are part of that commission. He did appoint a chairman, but from down by the Kalamazoo River. And I pushed that that person be on equal footing, because guess who he did appoint to that committee? A representative from Enbridge, so no Indians. So he didn't want to do it, he didn't plan to do it, but with our pressure from Indian country, we forced him to appoint an American Indian to that committee. So, but I still say the only logical choice is to shut down Line 5. My people have inhabited the Great Lakes Basin since time immemorial, long before the current political boundaries were drawn. My people have lived in balance near the Great Lakes as our home for our food and our drink, our work, and our spiritual connection to our treaty territory. As the Indigenous people, we have the inherent responsibility to protect and preserve our waters. Our women especially have that role and duty, and one of our previous events, we did have a ceremony that was intended to protect our waters going forward as we fight this fight. Our traditional teachings combine with modern science to strengthen our historical understanding that water is the lifeblood of our Mother Earth. Our science rivals that of the state officials, but without a bias towards exploitation. There are only two outcomes for the future of Line 5, and one of these two things will happen. Either it is decommissioned before it ruptures, or it's decommissioned after it ruptures. This line is already beyond its intended lifespan, and it will fail. A catastrophe is imminent. The big question is, will we take the responsible action to prevent it, or will we be forced to remediate a tragedy that could have been prevented? This is your clarion call. A decommission plan must be put in place immediately, and a plan devised to take this line out of service before it destroys the fisheries. I'm from a fishing household. My family line has been fisher. My dad was a commercial fisherman, and so it's in my DNA. But also the tourism and livelihoods of so many are at stake, and Michigan residents and tourists. Why would tourists want to come to see an oil slick or devastated wildlife? Pure Michigan can hardly be pure with the stench of oil. Millions of dollars in tourism funds will go to another state. Enbridge Line 5 is now nearly 13 years beyond its 50-year lifespan. Numerous small ruptures have already occurred on portions of the same line on the land, including a spill last December in Manistee, Michigan. How many of you knew there was a spill in Manistee, Michigan? Just 1 mile from Lake Michigan. And so it happened in Kalamazoo, it happened last December. It defies logic to believe that it is not going to happen again. The waters that would be impacted by any spill from Line 5 in the Straits area include northern Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, which encompasses our treaty fish spawning, nursing, and fishing areas within our 1836 treaty territory. It's estimated that more than half of our tribal fishing effort and harvesting these waters will be destroyed forever. We have fished in this territory since time immemorial. Since Jesus Christ walked this earth, my people have fished in this territory. This has been our way of life. And I'm not overstating that, because our treaty case, we won in the Bayliss Big Able of Law versus U.S., and part of the ability to use gill nets was because there were carbon dated gill nets that we had in our possession that date back to the time of Christ. The state's dereliction here is unfathomable and inexcusable. 1 million gallons of oil sits under the bridge as we speak. A catastrophic oil spill in the Mackinac Straits area would also have severe impacts on our sports fishery. So if you're a walleye fisherman, take note. It would result in a shutdown of municipal water intakes for numerous communities, devastate shorelines, and the Mackinac Island ecosystem and surrounding tourism industry. Again, tens of millions of tourism revenues are at stake. You can see this simulation a little bit, but within about 4 hours, Mackinac Island will be completely engulfed in oil. Mackinac Island, in our tradition, we migrated from thousands of years ago from the East Coast based on an Indian woman having a vision that we were to go to Turtle Island. Turtle Island is Mackinac Island. Mackinac means turtle in our Anishinaabe language. And so Mackinac Island will be completely choked off within 4 hours, and it will take 6 to 8 weeks to clean the water intakes in order for the people on Mackinac Island to be able to use the water there again. Mackinac Island has no other water source. They use the local water source. The islanders would have to be evacuated, and they'd have to be evacuated quickly before the oil permeates, because the boats will not be able to get across for fear of ignition. Most of the residents will have to be flown off the island. A lot of my people don't have the kind of resources to be able to get back and forth across the island. And again, you think of the tens of millions of dollars in tourism industry that will be gone. It'll be just completely gone, because nobody's going to come to see our beautiful Mackinac Island if it's all engulfed in oil. The wanton disregard for the environment by this unitary state of government, with the House and the Senate of the same party as the governor, who sat idle as children in Flint were drinking lead-laced water, is immoral. We have seen attempts to deregulate the hunting of wolves, a planned mine in the traditional hunting and gathering location for my people in Bay Mills at Rexton, foot dragging on Line 5 with commission after commission and study after study, while the issue is effectively stalled for big business to drive revenues, but the threat grows each day and each week and each day and each minute. Again, I want to stress that there's only 2 possible outcomes for Enbridge Line 5 at the Straits of Mackinac, and one of these 2 things will eventually occur. The pipeline will rupture and cause catastrophic damage to the Great Lakes system, or a regulatory agency will succeed in requiring the decommission of the Straits segment before a catastrophe occurs. We have had probably over 10 different public meetings across the state of Michigan. We've had a press release with Oil and Water Don't Mix that I was a part of for the Love of Water flow. I really like that one. We've had several public sessions. We had the flotilla last summer in the Mackinac City area where we had all of these canoes lined up and we had the big signs up. So some of us have been engaged and involved in this quite a bit. Again, there's been at least 10 public sessions. And I have to say that I'm puzzled why some of my fellow tribal board members in the St. Ignace area have not been to even one event and have not spoken even one word of the critical nature of this issue. So it's important to me and to us as a tribe because it will devastate Mackinac Island, which is Turtle Island, Mackinac City, Sheboygan, St. Ignace, and all of those communities will be devastated by this, and not one word. Enbridge has been incredibly effective at buying local support. Some of us that have been pushing this have been trying to get local municipalities to pass resolutions to call for the shutdown of Line 5. Suspiciously, several of those local communities have not done anything. And I found out today, and we're going to ask him, I'm going to put him on the spot, the city of Sault Ste. Marie hasn't passed anything. And so I'm going to ask in public, he didn't prompt us, I'm asking for our city commissioner to bring back to the city to pass a resolution to support the shutdown of Line 5. It's irresponsible for us to turn a blind eye to this. And so I'm asking Jay Gage if he will bring that back to the city commission. And I will be writing a letter directly to them as well. So we heard that there was a truck bot in Mackinac County. I don't know if that's true, but we've been trying hard to get Mackinac County to take a position on this. So we do know and believe that Enbridge has been very effective at buying local support. Let me give you one example. Bonnie Culfa knows this is true. We were invited to a session that was requested by the DNR and the DEQ to the Mackinac Straits Hospital to have a meeting to talk about Marquette Park. Well, Marquette Park's very important to us locally because we hold our powwow there, our St. Ignace powwow. It's not the Sioux Tribe's powwow. We support it with the local community there. But they invited us to this meeting and they said, well, we got some money. We're going to fix up the park. We're going to make a connection from the rest area that will come right to the park. We're going to fix up the park. You'll be able to use the park. And I'm like, well, geez, this sounds really nice. Who's paying for this? Was my question. And guess who's paying for it? Enbridge. So Enbridge has found an effective way to buy the silence of some of the community members in St. Ignace. They have the most at stake in this issue. And so, again, so our Anishinaabe teachings tell us that water is the lifeblood of our Mother Earth. Damage to our waters would mean damage to our way of life, and we will fight to protect our treaty waters. And I ask that you join us in helping us to get Line 5 shut down. Which. Yes, Nicole.
I'm wondering what is the estimated cost to our tribal fishermen should this Enbridge pipeline burst? Because, you know, there's a lot of tribes in this area, a lot of commercial fishermen, like you mentioned. But what would be the financial cost to the families and the communities that rely on our tribal fishermen?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. So, right now, with the invasive species and with lamprey, we already are fighting a battle, and it sometimes feels like a losing battle with the federal government not doing what they said they would do in the consent decree to eradicate invasives. So already we have a very delicate balance in our fisheries. A spill of this magnitude will eliminate our commercial fisheries. It will eliminate our subsistence fishing. And that's not fear tactics. Anybody who knows the balance, the delicate balance already that we're fighting with invasives that the ballast water and the federal government haven't addressed has already brought us to the brink. This will put us over the edge, and our life way that we have exercised and practiced for thousands of years will be entirely eliminated. That is the prediction. That brings up another question that I pushed through these consultation sessions. Sioux Tribe, by the way, was very effective in getting some elements that are on that commission study plan. I still don't really have a lot of faith that they're going to do anything with it, but I will say that we were real adamant, and Bay Mills was on the phone every single time, that I asked specifically for a risk management assessment of the total liability for this. And how do I know to ask that question? I was at Enbridge, or Kalamazoo, when that spill happened down there. It took 10 years to litigate this. They finally got the money to the people after 10 years, the damages that were done. People were displaced from their homes. So the question for us is, that's somewhat contained. This is not going to be able to be contained. It is going to spill and it's going to be rampant for a period of time. So I think that the cost of doing business and the fixed cost should at least cover the insurance cost of the liability on the other end. Now, one thing that's disturbing to know is that they haven't already done that. They haven't even thought about that because they don't plan to have a spill. They're praying that they won't. And if they do, then it gets into litigation and you can only recover what you can prove that you should recover. So that element, that recommendation did make it into the study plan as the study group is working forward. So I have to believe, I don't know how to even predict it because Kalamazoo was self-contained and that was $1 billion. This is going to be several billions of dollars. Marty.
So when we were at the Indigenous Farming Conference, Winona LaDuke was talking about how in Minnesota at least, White Earth, they're approaching it with the idea that treaty rights don't have to follow the same guidelines as property rights. So property right claims it's damaged after the fact. So if we were following that model, we would come back later after the damage was done and say, you owe us this. But as far as treaty rights, we don't have to wait for that. We can say this is our treaty right, this is our land, and the potential for harm is real and severe. And so we can actually bring lawsuit now. Why don't we?
So I will say that I can't speak for the other 4 tribes on behalf of bringing a treaty or lawsuit. And I have to be careful about what I say because I'm the chair of that intertribal group. But I will say that all 5 tribes take this very seriously. And we have talked about how we believe the state's dereliction of their responsibility in co-managing the resource. So the consent decree that was created as a result of Big Able Law versus the United States, that stipulated that we co-manage the resource in the Great Lakes. And so we have CORA, which is representative of the tribes, and then we have the Executive Council, which is the federal government and also the state. And I think we believe, as the individual tribes, that the state's not fulfilling their obligation to manage the resource. Now, there's a big leap from that belief and feeling to actually filing a lawsuit. And so we briefly discussed it, and I think we have to have more discussion on it. Filing a federal lawsuit, as you probably have watched on the whole Rexton issue, is not as simple as it seems. A lot of people get very frustrated and angry with us because we don't roll the dice and go ahead and file a lawsuit. But whenever you file a lawsuit, ultimately it's up to a judge to decide. And so we do have, on the Rexton issue, we do have the exercise of our inland rights that would be put in jeopardy and in threat by having filed that lawsuit. And so some people who don't pay close enough attention are willing to just say, okay, well, let's file a lawsuit without regard to what can we lose. All of our existing rights that we exercise, you can lose. So on this one, we'd have to weigh out what are the pros and cons of potentially losing ground. One other very dangerous thing is that the judge that would hear this case is an anti-Indian judge. It is Judge Yonker out of the Western District that we know is anti-Indian. He's already, he filed lawsuits against my tribe, against Bay Mills tribe, for what the federal law allows us to do, because he worked for an anti-Indian lobby firm, an attorney law firm, to stop Gun Lake from getting their land in trust in the first place. So we also have to keep in mind that you go in front of a judge that's got such a very clear, and he has the discretion. You can't recuse a judge on an accusation. And so he has a lot of discretion. So right now, we don't think it's in our interest with the Supreme Court, 9 out of 10 cases, well, maybe it's now 8 out of 10 cases have been lost because Bay Mills won their case. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court and they kicked it back. But the Supreme Court stacked against us right now, and the local judge, the U.S. Attorney Judge, is also anti-Indian. So all of that has to be weighed into consideration. So some of our citizens have been frustrated with it because they don't understand all that detail. But we are unified as our 5 treaty tribes in wanting to address this issue. I believe we passed a resolution calling for the shutdown of Line 5. So one more question, then I'm gonna let Lon do his part, and then I think we're gonna open it up for questions again.
And maybe that's what you're gonna address, Lon, is who has the power to shut this down? Is it the state of Michigan?
The state of Michigan, the governor can't shut this down, yes. The state of Michigan has it, and PIMSA out of the federal government.
Well, come on up this way.
And you know what, you know who's got the power?
The key to that is in the easement. And we have the complete authority, the state has authority over that.
We have the power. That's the line. You know, that's the bottom line to this. It's people like us, residents of Michigan, who are paying attention, to go out there and petition our government and get an answer here. We have the power to do this. You know, like you, I grew up working hard and playing by the rules and never giving up. Those are the lessons I learned from a family with 5 generations of Northern Michigan history. The same lessons you have. And those lessons, like you, served me well. I worked hard all my life. I was one of the first in my family to graduate from college. I was in Iraq in 2005 as a civilian. I came home in 2006 and worked to invest in and grow manufacturing companies. I'm going to take those same values to Congress to do 3 things. 1, we need a government that's every bit as honest and hardworking as the people who pay for it. That's us. 2, we need to keep the UP and Northern Michigan both beautiful and profitable. We can't strike that balance. And number 3, and this is the most important, we need to create a place where we can stay and succeed. We are losing way too many of our kids and our grandkids to downstate or out of state for education opportunities or for jobs. All of those 3 objectives really are encapsulated in this pipeline mission. You know, we're being told, let's talk very briefly about this. We're being told this pipeline is safe. Who's telling us that? The very same people who told us that the water is safe. We're being told it's safe by the very same company that was responsible for the largest pipeline, inland pipeline disaster in the history of the United States, right here in Michigan, the Kalamazoo River in 2010. You know, look, I don't think anybody here is opposed to oil or opposed to pipelines. Pipelines are the safest way to move oil. But there are smart places to put a pipeline, and there are not so smart places to put a pipeline. A 63-year-old oil pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac, with those currents, not a smart place to put a pipeline, pure and simple. You know, there's also something greater at risk here than just the immediate dangers to our health and to our ecology and to our economy. And that is, we have 21% of the world's fresh water. In our lifetime, fresh water will become the #1 valuable natural resource in the history of the planet. In the history of mankind, fresh water within our lifetime will be the most valuable natural resource. And we are going to have to fight to keep it. We're going to have to fight to show the world how to better use and protect it. And that is where we can create thousands of jobs. That's where we can create the environment that will save our Great Lakes. We have to show the world how to better use and protect fresh water. We can do that with the Freshwater Institute. Right here, the 1st congressional district has the most fresh water of any district in America. We have the ability to show the world how to better use and protect fresh water. And if you're wondering how does that work? Well, think about what Stanford University did to create Silicon Valley. Right? Back in the 60s and the 70s, people looked at the future and said, you know, that computer science, that computer engineering, that's going to be the future. So they increased their curriculum there at Stanford University, and they created the labor pool, if you will, and the thought leadership on it. Those folks stayed in Palo Alto, and the rest is history. They created Silicon Valley. In our lifetime, within the next 20 years, nations will be going to war over fresh water. Fresh water will become the most valuable natural resource in the history of our planet. And we are right now at risk of losing that credibility, of showing the world how to use and protect it, if we trust the wrong people. If we have another Flint, if we have another Kalamazoo River disaster, you know, what would happen? What would happen if we tried to tell the world, well, you know what, here's how you use fresh water. If we had a disaster in our Great Lakes, what would happen? They tell us to go jump in a lake, park in a pond. But that's exactly what we do. We have to show the world how to better use and protect fresh water. And with that, we can build a better place to live, a place where we can stay and succeed. We have that, that's within our ability right now. You know, we're here today, and you're here because you care, but we need you to do more. We need you to go out there. When you talk about who has the authority to go out there and get this thing shut down, we do. We need you to go home today and work go home to your communities and get resolutions passed at your local communities. We now have over 27 resolutions passed. Many more are coming down the pike from local townships, municipalities, counties, and tribal nations, and cities and counties. 27 of them are being passed, and there's more coming down. Second, go on our website. We created a website called shutdownline5.com. That's shutdownline5.com. Sign up there. Add your name to the list. And last but not least, take a yard sign. Go home and show your community. The more people know, like you just said, a year ago, you didn't even know that most folks don't even understand that there is a pipeline, that it's 63 years old, that it's operated by the same people who were responsible for the Kalamazoo River disaster. When we show people, when we inform them, and we educate them what's happening, they're on our side. So we need you to go out there and help us and inform your communities. Look, all of this, and we'll take questions here in a few minutes. All of this is really no different from what our forefathers did. All of this, creating a place where we can stay and succeed, takes investment and protection of our greatest assets. What do we have here? Our people, our land, and our Great Lakes. When you invest and you protect in those assets, that's how we can create a place where we can stay and succeed. This is no different from what our forefathers did. They came here and we led the world in international trade, fur trade in the 1700s. Then we led the world in mining, copper and iron ore in the UP. Then we led the world in lumber. It was our lumber that built the American West. The question for us is what's next? And what's next is fresh water. We have to show the world how to better use and protect fresh water. And when we do that, we can build a place where we can stay and succeed. Thank you very much.
There's a real positive way that we can all support this. We took a trip to Escanaba a few weeks ago, and it's pretty much that line on the map in the brochure. And all along that road, there were these huge homemade signs, big white sheets, NIMBY, 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 NIMBY. And we thought, well, what's this NIMBY mean? And one of them had written underneath, not in my backyard. And it's about that. And I asked, if you had those signs here. She said no, and nobody seems to know who's doing it. So I think it's just on your own. If you've got a can of blue spray paint and a big old sheet, hang it up out there with NIMBY on it, but not in my backyard.
I love that. Take a picture, put it up on social media and show everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there are, we've got a situation now, thinking of NIMBY. Look, Canada's getting its oil, Enbridge is getting its money, and Michigan is taking all the risks. That's right.
Yeah.
We've got Canadian oil moving to Canadian oil, moving a pipeline that's running from Canada to Canada right through our backyard. And we're taking all the risk on a 63-year-old pipeline. From the very same folks that told us, oh, it's safe in Flint. You had asked about the fisheries. Beyond the immediate financial aspect of having to shut down our commercial fishing, would you buy it? But the reputational damage. Would you buy? What if there was a Flint water company and they bottled fresh water and they sold it? Would you buy that? No. So imagine even trying to. Let's just say that we magically cleaned up all the oil after a spill. Do you think you would put a little ad? Hey, buy that Michigan fish. BP in the Gulf is still dealing with that disaster. With Pure Michigan, the Great Lakes state.
What's Pure Michigan?
It's a Great Lakes state, plural. It's not. Well, some of them are great. The other ones are, oil spill. We've got to protect our Great Lakes.
I got a Facebook question from Alex Zurich. He said, in the past you've said you will inspect and replace if necessary. Is that still your position?
Well, my position is three things. One, we need to shut this pipeline down immediately. Number two, we have to have it independently inspected. And number three, let's work with this governor's task force to determine alternatives to moving this oil. That's my position. It's been that from the beginning. We've got to shut down the pipeline, independently inspect it to make sure it's 100% safe, and let's immediately work with the governor's task force to find alternatives.
Would it be a good idea to list those 3 items and send them to all of our congressmen and to the governor and to, I mean.
Absolutely, and that's being done now. You know, if you look at these 27 resolutions that have been passed, you know, it's to varying degrees that are addressing the pipeline. Some are shut it down, some are just shut it down to oil, but all of those resolutions are being copied to our 2 state senators and to our state commissions.
If the oil is shut down, say you just say we went and you say it's shut down, who does that affect? Who's that oil?
Canada.
Is Canada, is that correct?
Yeah, Canada. You know, I want to address, you're hearing some, we had Senator Casperson went to the state board. Senator Rick Jones, by the way, a Republican in Lansing, put a bill in to address the pipeline. And we applaud his efforts. It was again, shut the pipeline down and make sure it's inspected to make sure that it's 100% safe. Senator Casperson, who is senator from the UP, made a statement that it would increase the cost of propane. Now, propane is taking the pipeline does haul propane, but that propane is taken out in Rapid River, just north of Escanaba. So if you shut the straits, the pipeline down at the straits, you would still be able to take the propane out at the Rapid River site and still distribute it to the people of the UP, because propane is important to the consumers of the UP. Absolutely, you know, that heating oil, making sure that they have reliable and low cost propane is very important to our residents here. But to use fear mongering to say that if this pipeline were shut down at the Mackinac Straits, that propane would go up, the cost is just flat out wrong.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So when we were fighting the wolf hunt issue, Casperson was the loudest voice on opposition to us. And traditionally we believe that our brother Mayangan has been our companion since the beginning of time, and that's why we want to protect him. We also don't eat wolves, because Indians are not, well, I'm a vegan, but don't anybody repeat that. But Indians are generally carnivores, and we have our first hunt as part of our right at 13 years old. And so we kill animals to eat, but we only kill what we eat. And nobody eats the wolf. So wolf hunting is only for sport. And so one of the fear-mongering tactics that Casperson used was to claim that the livestock was being killed and that these wolves, and he testified to that, and under oath he had to admit that he lied. There was no truth to that. He lied on that issue. So to take it from a man who is going to lie on an issue like that, I suppose for votes, is going to lie on an issue like this.
Senator Casperson's defending the oil industry, and perhaps at the same time taking thousands of dollars from into his campaign from the oil industry. Yes.
Has the oil company provided any information as to if this is shut down, or just this section is shut down, if that would cause pressure or situations on either side of that shutdown?
What I'd like to do from this moment on, if we could just all take questions. Karen, if you want to answer that one, that would be we'll just do it right here from the table. Is that okay?
I'm just wondering if, we think of it as a pipeline A to B, right? But it's a web. If they can't move it from A to B to C, they can move it from A to D to L to, they have ways of routing the slugs of oil. They take amounts of oil, tanks full of oil, and send it through the best route they can. If we stop it at the straits, they have other ways of transporting it.
Allison, and then Dr. Reinhardt.
There's been a lot in the newspaper the last couple days about them, the easements as far as the line. Yeah. Is there any movement on that?
Yeah.
Explain what it was.
Right. The pipeline company, Enbridge, has an easement from the state of Michigan. It's called a bottom land easement. It gives them the right to put the pipe along the lake bottom. And it's subject to review periodically, every few years. And recently, For Love of Water and Oil and Water Don't Mix got hold of the testimony that Enbridge itself provided to the Michigan Pipelines Task Force and compared that with the terms of the easement. And they found a number of violations. Some of these violations are pretty extreme. Things like wall thickness down to less than half an inch. It's supposed to maintain an inch. Less than half an inch due to both manufacturing defects from 1953 and corrosion over the 62 years since then. So a number of these defects are so severe that they constitute violations of the terms of the easement. And as a result of that, the state of Michigan is required under the terms to give Enbridge 90 days to comply, to bring things up to speed. Well, they couldn't possibly do that with the types of violations that Love of Water found. They couldn't possibly do it in 90 days. So basically, what Enbridge's own testimony in front of the task force has said, they are in violation of the easement. The state of Michigan has grounds to make them stop.
Let's see, it was Dr. Reinhardt, and then Nicole, and then who had their hand up over here? TJ, and then Kevin. So I'll be kind of like the...
So when we say shut down line 5, are we saying shut down line 5 from Escanaba to Detroit? What are we saying?
Really under the bridge.
Different organizations have different perceptions of the risk. From the point it enters the Upper Peninsula, it's actually a threat to Lake Michigan. There are different resolutions out there, and so I'm not going to speak for Flow, for Oil and Water Don't Mix, for any of the organizations. I can't speak for the tribe on this one.
I think it's important to have some idea of what we're saying, because just in this presentation, I'm hearing different things about what it actually means.
Absolutely. Yes, and different organizations have different views on that.
My position would be the critical nature of this right now is the water under the bridge. So I would be happy with the start would be to shut down line 5 under the bridge. As a son of a fisherman, that's my critical path. Nicole?
I think it's kind of multifaceted question. During Kathy's presentation, I noticed the pipeline that was going like through Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Is that right?
No, that's the international border.
Oh, that's the international border. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
It still is a waterway though, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
That is a waterway though, it's not land.
The pipelines cross here, and yes, that crosses the waterway there, and I had pointed that out. But these are the international border lines.
Yeah, that one's a border line.
Right.
Can we get rid of that too?
Heck of an idea, Marty.
So does that line at the far north then terminate right there?
Sorry?
The northernmost line squiggles through.
That's the border.
Oh, it is too, okay.
This is the international border between the U.S. and Canada.
And then straight line.
Comes down through
Okay, gotcha.
down through Lake St. Clair and up through the other lakes. So the pipelines are this one in Canada, a couple of branches of it here, line 5, and several lines that come down through Wisconsin, split just at the southern border with Illinois, one going this way, one going that way, a small one going through here, a couple of, and then come across here and that. The pipes that are indicated here constitute Enbridge's Lakehead system or mainline pipeline system east.
So then my question still is important because you did note those pipelines over on near those two lakes. Yep, and
Right
then to the right of the map?
And over here?
Yes.
Yes, this is on the Canadian shore of Lake Ontario. And so yes, flowing through there would be an issue as well. And as well up here, this is line 5. It's very close to Lake Michigan. A burst there would
What about
contaminate
just leaks and a little bit of spillage? Because aren't those two bottom Great Lakes very highly contaminated?
They have had historic levels of contamination of a number of different things. Some are getting less contaminated and other things are getting more contaminated, depends what you're measuring. But yes, they're shallower, they're smaller, and they're much more populated shorelines than Lake Superior and Upper Lake Huron. So yes, the water is more contaminated.
DJ.
The line runs through, is it all state land or is it private as well?
I'm sorry.
From across the UP, is that private land as well? The line runs under?
Yeah, it'll be back and forth, but there'll be easements along the way.
Well, the reason I asked, those are state easements, correct?
Is that?
State easements.
Yeah.
Different than the one under the line, so I guess my question would be, theoretically, couldn't a tribe buy a chunk of that land that the line runs through, put it in a trust?
Yeah.
And then contest it from going forward? I mean, I tend to think a little more aggressively than bureaucratic.
I've never heard you be aggressive, never.
I just want to jump in real quick, because right there in St. Ignace, it goes through our traditional reservation land. We have claim right now, so the tribe does have claim. Why, if we're gonna do that, DJ, if we're gonna buy land and shut it down, why not just shut it down?
Well, that's also next.
You'll have 3 different fights, but I agree with you. I mean, that's 3 different fights, so you might as well double it up. That's the way I look at it. They take a more aggressive approach.
There's a couple.
Besides, we can always use more land.
Yeah.
There's also the approach of approaching their insurer or their insurance company's insurer, the reinsurer, because this would be so catastrophic, it would just bankrupt the insurer. So we need to maybe talk to them and say, are you aware, are you paying attention?
That's why I got in the discussion through the consultation, the risk assessment of what the cost would be. Because right now the insurance wouldn't even come close to covering the cost. And if we do an objective assessment of what the risk assessment is, and they have to carry insurance to that level, that's going to change the whole nature of this decision factor. So right now they got it 2 years ago when nobody went back when kids were eating like paint. I guess that's happening in Flint too. Kathy.
Okay, Kathy Abramson, I'm on the council there. And first of all, I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, you know what we call vegetarian Anishinaabe.
It's Ojibwe for poor hunter.
That's right. So, with all due respect. But, you know, you can't be good at everything, so. I will say that we have to, I'm not quite sure how to handle this, because it seems like when tribes get together to do something, there are people, just because they don't like tribes, don't take us serious. And everybody should. You know, we're also the caretakers of this land and the water, and we take that responsibility very serious. And I understand you have to go through this system and protocols and all this, but we've got to do something, and we all have to work together. And I'm not quite sure how to do that. So to me, I'm sorry I had to step out. I think you were telling us different ways of what things that we could do. But it seems to me that if you get the people all that go to Mackinac Island, to Mackinac City, those people that come there for the summer, I mean, that's very important. Those people that make their money from there and get their backing, and I don't know if you do.
If I could,
No, go ahead.
Well, what you're hitting on is a very important point, and that is the more people know about this, the more more political pressure will be put on the governor and our federal government to shut this Line 5 down. Now, what you had talked about earlier, Enbridge has been going to various communities throughout the UP and northern lower, and having private meetings with public officials. That's wrong. That is, you know, this is a public land. These are our Great Lakes, and for Enbridge to have private meetings with officials, it kind of begs the question: what are they hiding? You know, they're not showing us the data from this pipeline. They're not being completely transparent, and now they're trying to have private meetings with our elected officials. And so today, I'm issuing a challenge to Enbridge to have a public debate with them in every community in northern Michigan. Let's have this debate. Let's have it openly, and we'll let the people know what's under their Great Lakes, and show them precisely the damages that could occur with a leak.
Now, how do you get them there?
Well,
Because
again,
I'm not quite sure how successful we've been in getting crowds and.
well, this is a terrific crowd right here.
We had a huge crowd in St. Ignace. We had probably about 200 people.
Yeah.
But you're right, because when I looked around the room, I didn't see any city representatives. I didn't see our tribal board members from that very unit at that session.
And
So
we went to, on March 10th, that meeting at the courthouse, or the Mackinac County Courthouse there. Yeah, the commissioners, the room they had it in was about the size of the area behind that divider, and they turned us away. So,
We need to have more rooms just like this all along in communities that are adjacent to the pipeline.
Well, to give you an example of the insidiousness of what they probably think what they're doing is they're protecting their right to free enterprise, I guess. But to demonstrate the insidiousness of this, we had a session on Mackinac Island which got moved 4 times because when we originally were going to have it, it was going to be at the Mustang. Then Enbridge got wind of that, so they contacted the Mustang Lodge people. They kicked us out. Then we were going to go to the schools. Then they got to somebody, we got kicked out of there. Then we were going to go to downtown in the city hall. Then they got to the mayor and we got kicked out of there. And they used the fear tactic that we were going to affect during the Detroit Regional Chamber Conference and we're going to hurt tourism. And so then we got moved to a church. So then we had it in a church. But Enbridge is spending a lot of time and effort and money to try to stop people from knowing what's going on, and they're pumping dollars in, because the rumor is that they bought it's a rumor that they bought a truck for Mackinac County. Well, for $50,000 or $30,000, heck, we could do a 2% to Mackinac County and get them a truck. If that's all it takes, if the price tag is that low, so what we have to do is we have to start exposing this, and the local officials have a public responsibility. We also have to get citizens to understand what's going on. So these kind of forums is the way to do it. And I want to thank Lon because we have associations that have been doing it, but we're getting much more attention now because Lon has been hosting these. So thank you.
So I just want to say just really quick on behalf of the city of Sault Ste. Marie, unfortunately we aren't important enough to get a truck yet, I guess. Unfortunately, yeah, I guess. And it's incredibly encouraging to see this many people because I'm not going to throw any of my fellow commissioners under the bus, but I'm the only one saying things about this. I'm the only one sending emails like, hey, do you guys know about Line 5? Hey, why don't you watch this documentary? Let's pass this resolution. I sent the first draft of a resolution that was, I think, fairly strong. It called for the shutdown of Line 5. And they're like, way too strong. Okay, well, let's see if we can pass something. So I sent a little bit watered down one. You're not getting it, kid. You're 26. You'll learn, I guess I will. So the most recent resolution that I sent to my fellow commissioners just called for the governor to exercise more oversight, to work with his, I forget the exact words, but work with the task force and things like that. It's like the easiest, most vanilla resolution of all time. And a friend of mine take me aside, and for those of you who are local, you may know that I got called Verna Lawrence, and if that's going to be my title, then unfortunately, the shoe fits.
Shoe travel.
The shoe fits. There it is.
Okay, we have Larry, and then this guy right here. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. And then back here, and then Joe P. And then take care of everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And then Angie.
Thank you.
And then. Okay, Larry.
Yeah, I just, as some individuals know me, and it goes back 40 years. I've been in political activist all over the United States, actually, Washington, D.C. a lot. And really encouraging 2 things, and I'll try to really make it quick. A year and a half ago, New York City, almost 500,000, mainly young people, were at a demonstration. It was specifically an environmental demonstration. People are really opening their eyes to just this kind of thing. And then going back a little bit, like 5 years ago, St. Ignace, there was a demonstration there, and it was like 2,000 people. This was just after that accident. A lot of people became aware of what was happening there at the, Mackinac straits and all that stuff, that the danger that was involved in there. And the other thing is, I was personally involved in well, a lot of things, but they were going to deforest. It was another corporation, horrible corporation, just as bad as the one you're talking about. I won't even mention the name. Some of the individuals, Sioux Tribe got involved in this fight, but we kind of won it. It was a little bit, fracking came up and I think diverted the horrible corporation to something else, but they were going to deforest. And everybody's talking about jobs back then. The corporation lied and lied and lied about the job situation. The loggers were very, very supportive, ended up being against this project, knowing that they were going to lose workers, and they were going to convert the forest around the whole area, 200 square miles of this area, into the factory is going to be built in, or refinery is going to be built in Kinchlow, and yeah, rings a bell. So the corporation though lied and lied and lied, and this is very typical. You don't ever trust any of the corporations. That's land is more important than the economy. No matter what kind of economy you're living under, land is vital, and this issue is present. I know it sometimes I try not to alienate people, but being involved in this kind of issue is very passionate, and I know what could happen with when you get the corporations and they're interested in profit. And always remember, that's all they're interested in. And whatever they do, they lie all the time. Don't trust anything they say. So, anyways, right here.
Paul. Just wanted to know how many county commissions have been presented with a resolution, and what has been the response?
Sorry. Blame on ours.
No, I'm sorry, county commissions, Chippewa, Mackinac, Lewis, whatever.
I know that I've sent out emails to county commissioners in the first congressional district, 32 counties. There are a number of them that they're at different stages, but statewide we've had now over 27 government entities pass these resolutions. I know of about a half dozen more that are in play right now. I would expect, it's within our ability to get about 100 before the end of the summer. We can get 100 resolutions passed, and I think that will have an impact on this debate. This governor and the federal government needs to listen to the local units of government.
On that point, I can tell you that I had a conversation for about an hour and a half with Jim Martin, who's our county commissioner for here in the city, and I don't think that they have any intention of bringing something like this up, or the response that I got from him, and I've gotten this response a number of times from the county commission on similar things, is, well, we don't do that. We don't do that kind of thing, passing resolutions about that kind of stuff. It's too controversial. We don't do that. That's too radical. We don't do that kind of stuff. and I'm surprised I don't see my good friend Dr. Phil Belfi here, but I would ask everyone in this audience to help me with this, in that we need you to contact commissioners that aren't me. You already got my vote. Don't call me and yell at me like you got me already. Call them, the other people, and help me lobby them.
What about the mayor?
Call him too.
I walk with him on days.
I would call him first, probably, actually.
Okay, right here. Wait, I got you on the list though.
Okay. Lon brought up what my question was, and it's about the tactic that Enbridge uses of the private meetings. First of all, I question the legality, and I know Jay has to be aware. When you have a government body of 5, 7, whatever number of people, you have to be very careful about the number of people that are officially meeting at any one time, because it's considered then a quorum and you're doing the government entity's business. If these meetings are inviting, let's say, the Sioux City Council, and 5 city council people show up, is it legal, number one? No, and I know that. Yeah. But the point is that what we need to do is, when we find out about these, and I know a couple of them took place while we were gone this winter, and I wondered, is anybody going there and checking and taking pictures of the number of the representatives that are actually showing up at these meetings? Even if it's not a quorum, the pictures, and then to your local press or whatever, saying, why are these people meeting in these secret private meetings with the Enbridge. You know, why are our elected officials meeting this way? I think it's gotta be a tactic that we use. The other thing I would question, and maybe somebody knows, Annabelle, you might know, are these so private that you can't go and demand to go in?
Well, we probably just don't know what they're actually happening.
We've gone into lots of them, you have a lot of people to call for like.
So I use the term insidious, now I use nefarious. Because this is not only a secret issue, the legislature had legislation that would make private all of the records related to Enbridge. To make that confidential and secret and private. So this is, and Casperson is a supporter of that. So you gotta really watch your legislators on what they're gonna try to pull when they think we're not watching. Because this group has been watching, and I think we put a stop to that, but they drafted legislation that would have made all the information that the state has related to this easement and the original permit confidential and secret. All right, we had Joe P.
Yeah, that was my question too, was the Open Meetings Act, and also don't they have to post the agenda of the meeting and so many days in advance and let people know before they have the meeting, so that if that was going to be the object of the meeting, that everybody would have a chance to know and to participate?
If it's a meeting with the body proper. If it's with individuals, they don't have that responsibility. And if it's with the minority of that population, they don't have that responsibility. Now, it would depend on whether or not those councils, governments have ethics codes that require that to be disclosed is another question.
To quickly vouch for the ethics integrity of my commission, I can tell you that we do not violate the Open Meetings Act, and we're extremely good about not violating the Open Meetings Act. In fact, there's sometimes when we have email chains that get too close to discussing things outside of a public meeting, we shut that down. So to stand up for the integrity of my commission, my fellow commissioners, we do not violate that. I promise you.
Okay, we have, let's see, we have Angie first, and then we had this lady here, then we had Monica, then we had GT, and then we had you. You and you.
Skip it, DJ.
He does it all the time.
I got like a little blind spot.
It's
like brain damage.
This happens to me like twice a week. So I'm not used to it.
It's not a necessity.
I was on one of the shutdown Line 5 websites, I'm not sure which one, and I was, I'll call it debating, with a lady who was probably the wife of an Enbridge executive, and she wanted to lead the readers to believe that if Line 5 was shut down, that all kinds of Michigan workers would lose their jobs. So I'm wondering if there is any data out there that states how many Michigan workers there is actually working for Enbridge, and how many would actually lose their jobs if it is shut down.
Does anybody know?
Well, you know, I think I've read reports anywhere from 250 to 500 folks who work on this pipeline. Now, I've also read I'm sorry?
On all pipelines, I think.
I see. Okay. So
it's less than that.
Yeah, that work on this exact pipeline. And then how much of the oil, the question is, how much of that oil actually stays in Michigan? Now, we know that the propane is taken out at Rapid River, just north of Escanaba, and then distributed there. So that's obviously very important to the residents of the UP. But how much of the oil that then moves on to Sarnia, how much of that oil actually stays in Michigan?
None. Basically, there's three types of products being transported. There's the natural gas liquids that come out at Rapid River. There's oil that's passing through to Sarnia without stopping in Michigan. And then there's collections of gas and oil products from lower Michigan that are being collected and moved south. Everything moves north-south. They never move south-north in that pipeline. But there's basically three sets of products. If we stopped it at the Straits, only one set of products gets stopped because the natural gas liquids can still come in and the collections can still go south from lower Michigan. It's only that slug that's from Canada to Canada that stops.
I think in the Enbridge Executive's Vice Defense, when they were talking about the people who clean up the spills, they would lose their jobs.
Yeah. Darn, I didn't get that one in. I said, who cares? You know?
I'm from Newbury, Michigan. I am just wondering, you mentioned a documentary, there's the simulation. Where are these available so that I can go and say, I want you to go and look at this website? And is there any place locally that I can get more of these brochures to take with me?
There's a couple, and so let's do this. So there's a couple that I'll tell you off the top of my head. But if Kathy will send it to Lon, if Lon, you can put something out.
Yeah, we'll put it up on both lonjohnson.com, shutdownline5.com, and on our social media.
But also,
and the simulation will be on there because
yes,
I think that's
yes. In fact, that's an older simulation. There's been an updated simulation put together by the University of Michigan that shows the damage. You know, in excess of 700 miles of shoreline are at risk should we have a spill.
And also, oil and water don't mix.
Yeah, oil and water don't mix and flow.
For the
Two
love of
terrific
water.
organizations.
I love it's flow. It's for the love of water. Isn't that wonderful?
I want to just close out on this jobs. This is about jobs. This is about the millions of jobs that are dependent upon the Great Lakes. This is about our economy. You know, Michigan is tied to the Great Lakes like no other state, obviously. And if we were to have a leak there, the damage to our economy would be devastating. And you know, again, just there's thousands, millions of jobs here at stake if we were to have a leak. You know, I want to make sure that, you know, this whole old debate of the environment versus jobs, the environment are the jobs. Protecting our environment is crucial to jobs. And you know, I just think that there's been too much here. Folks are making, they're looking at the wrong number. We have to be paying attention to our statewide and nationwide economy should we have a leak.
So before we cut anybody off, there's 5 more that had their hands up. We'll hit those ones and then we'll see if we still have a tolerance because it's hot. But next would be Monica.
Hi. I've been studying this and I heard that Enbridge is making $2 million a year running oil and it just goes to Canada and we're taking the risk per day, $2 million per day. So I think this is just about corporate dominance and greed. So as far as shutting it down, they're benefiting. As far as what happened in Flint, that's a genocide. If this bursts, it'll be a genocide as well. And I think the key point is what Marty said and DJ about easement and that it's going through treaty land, that they're basically trespassing. So we just need to enforce it. They're in violation. That's just my comment. And then also, does anyone know about the public safety doctrine? Because the state of Michigan is also violating that. Public trust doctrine, where the state of Michigan is supposed to protect the water for everybody, and they're violating it by having a corroded pipeline. I also check out Dr. Edward Tim.
Yeah.
I went to 2 of his presentations, and he's saying that they're running 85% higher capacity of what the pipeline was even designed to have oil flow through it. And since it's corroded, it is going to cause it to burst. So that's another very scary thought.
Dr. Tim was at the previous estimate of that job.
He's an engineer that's been studying it. And he's also saying that it's corroded. What happened in it could happen. What happened in Santa Barbara? And Santa Barbara is so corroded you could take a screwdriver and put a pinhole. And he believes it's already leaking via pinhole leaks.
Right.
So it's probably already leaking.
This I put this one up and I didn't get a chance to get back to it, but this one right here. So they're saying a lot of things that just aren't true. They're saying that it's anchored all along the way and protected. We under the research that different advocates have done, there's a crevasse that is not supported at all. And we also know that there's invasive species that have camped onto the line that excrete their waste and it's acidic. So we believe, I'm using terms like imminent, but I don't think I'm overstating it because I think they don't even know how dangerous this was. There was a scuba crew that actually went through and saw several inches of encrustment of invasive species on it. So I want to recognize Monica I've been to almost all of these, and she has been at every single one of them, getting educated and get the information out. So thank you. Next
also,
is, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We have been attending the St. Ignace Commission meetings, and they are not listening to us, so we need more support about shutting down Line 5 in Mackinac County.
I think.
Joanne's been presenting, I've been speaking. I'm not a speaker, I don't like public speaking, but I speak out. So has Anthony, he lives on Mackinac Island, and I think he wanted to mention about meeting up with LSU students who put this together. So thank you for putting this together and hosting.
Good deal. GT.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Gordy was talking about having somebody come in to see with these secret meetings that Enbridge is having with city councils and county commissioners. They just did one with Alpena City Council last week, and they did it in such a place that you couldn't even park there. It was all on the property of the owner of the restaurant. So if you tried to go there, even have a demonstration, you couldn't do so without, trespassing on that private property. So they're very, very smart about where they're holding these, and they're making sure that you can't come in unless you're invited by them.
Okay, right here. Both of you.
Yep. My name is David Dwyer. This is my wife Annabelle, and we're connected with the Straits Area Concerned Citizens, and Anthony is as well. And we've been working on this for some time. I wanted to comment a little bit on alternatives at two levels. At one level, there's plenty of capacity on line 6B, which is the one that goes through Kalamazoo to Sarnia, to take the oil that now flows through line 5. They actually, after the Kalamazoo spill, increased the capacity from 30 to 36 inches. They can do it, they just don't want to do it because it would cost them too much money. There's another alternative that's kind of interesting, and if we think about the oil-based economy, that oil-based economy is what is forcing that oil under the straits. And you think about the whole economy from mining oil in Alberta, which is incredibly destructive, to the risk that we take in pumping it through, and then the risk that we get when we burn that oil. Surprisingly, Enbridge has spent, I forget how much, but millions and millions of dollars on renewables. I think they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're just waiting for this thing to spill, and then they'll move over to renewables. I think that we should start thinking about renewables as something else that can actually build the economy as much as preserving the pure Michigan water. Thank you.
You want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's really exciting for us to have everybody here working on this issue. And I think that we can continue not only passing resolutions and filing suits or threatening to file suits like the National Wildlife Federation has already done on the federal level, and Oil and Water Don't Mix is now doing related to the easement. But we need to continue passing the resolutions of various kinds and going to the meetings. We have been to, there are many of us here who have just heard about the meetings and gone to them. The problem, and this is what I would like to address to you on specifically, is that we need to figure out how to actually get a discussion going to make a decision in the right way before the rupture occurs. In other words, we are doing proper grassroots organizing, exactly what we should be doing, but we're really not having the kind of effect that needs to be as immediate as we need to have it. And so it's the question of the urgency and the effectiveness. Now, we do have a United States representative in this district. You would never know it. But we do have one, and I think that it's absolutely disgraceful that Benishek should be getting away with forcing you to even do any of this. But thank you for standing up. Thank you, Chairman, also, because this is requires this kind of leadership of the commissions and in addition to all of us who are working with grassroots. So
our congressman didn't care enough when he was looking to be reelected. He's lame now, and so we will get nothing out of our congressman.
Yeah,
but we have an opportunity to elect a congressman who's demonstrating an interest in this issue.
Yeah, and you're learning the ropes pretty quickly.
This is look, 21% of the world's fresh water is right here, and we are tied. This district has the most fresh water of any district in America. And we need a member of Congress that's going to fight to protect these Great Lakes. And that's precisely the kind of congressman I'll be. And that's all I got.
DJ, and then Jerry Lapine, and that's it. Feeling magnanimous and generous.
I almost forgot what I was looking at because my wife was texting me pictures of all the late library books that I have to bring back. So if anybody's been looking for Horton Hears the Who, I've had it for like 5 years. No, I guess you were talking about the elected groups and elected bodies as far as support, but I guess to me, a more impactful, less political body may be helpful as well, which is your local chambers and your CBEs, because basically, without them, you know, you don't have anything, and without our water, they don't have anything either. There's no reason to come here. And I did want to touch on Jay's thing about the truck. I think since '99 we got about 8.6 million trucks in there. So just so you know. But maybe a golf cart. Maybe a golf cart.
I think, DJ, I think you're right on target with the chambers, because sometimes this is written off as a eco-terrorist, environmental, liberous, pinko commie issue. It's not. This is an economy issue.
Yeah, it's tourism.
Absolutely.
Aside from the water, which is essential to life. Which, by the way, we all know why we can't bring wood over the bridge, right? The ash force. Yeah. The state promoted that threat. The state promoted the threat of that, which is a threat. But at the same time, you've got millions of barrels of oil flooding underneath that same bridge. So, I mean,
that's water.
Yeah, it's water. It's
Jerry.
Yeah, I'd like to let everybody know about what does go on there, because I worked there. I was there in 1968 when they put the pipelines in. There's two 20-inch lines across the streets. I was there with my family when they built the 36-inch line, which Enbridge claims is a 30-inch. And the reason they want it to be a 30-inch is because they want to minimize the aspects of a major spill. So there's less coming out of a 30 than there is a 36. But it's all of the same thing. Now, the line has been claimed to be an inch in thickness, and that's a lie. I was there. It's a half inch. The pipe that made it up to the line that crosses the straits that I was there to help install is a half-inch line. Nothing bigger, nothing different. 2 years, 3 years ago, they updated all their pumps from end to end. But it's got to be remembered, Enbridge doesn't own those pumping stations. Those pumping stations are owned and operated by others. I can't give you the names because I'm not exact on it, and I won't tell you anything that I don't know for a fact. But here's another issue that hasn't, Line 5 across the straits is probably the most terrible place for a leak to occur, okay? But it's already happened in Kalamazoo. Enbridge will not tell you how many dig-ups they've done in the last 5 years. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they were doing dig-ups on Line 5. So it was rotted then. It's probably more rotten today than it was at that point. But there's another issue. Line 5 starts at Canada and it goes into Canada, where it travels through all across the Upper Peninsula. Wisconsin, Minnesota, wherever it travels, when it crossed those creeks and tributaries, they dug them in. They didn't drill them and caisson and put them in caissons or anything of the such. They dug them, they dumped them in, and they backfilled them. And that's what happened. And I've been there, I've seen it. I've spent, over 50 years in the business of installing pipeline. So I'm fairly familiar with what goes on. And what they're doing, what Enbridge is doing across the UP, and you might want to check with the people in St. Agnes, but the people in Engadine got a party from Enbridge. The people at the school. They went into the schools. They're trying to brainwash the educators so that they pass this on to the children or the families or whoever they come in contact with. There are a lot of liars. They're a bag of liars.
When they had the Coast Guard, when they did this, when they did the simulation to see what the response would be, they paid for the barbecue. Enbridge paid for the barbecue at the Little Bear.
Yeah.
And we don't own the Little Bear, by the way, because we would have never allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
They paid for the
It don't
barbecue.
matter. It's a conspiracy orchestrated in Canada, and we're the victims of it. And if you're not a victim, you're not alive. And back to those tributaries. How long does it take for oil that's 50, 40 feet above sea level, or above the lake level, to get to that lake when it travels down that tributary? And who in the hell at Enbridge is going to tell you they got a leak? Not one of them. You don't have it. There's not an honest one in the bag. So they're just a bunch of bag of cats that need to be dealt with. Well, that's pretty much all I got to say about it, but they're wrong.
I'm sorry to interrupt, the library closes at 4 o'clock today.
When's the next city council meeting?
So I was just gonna say, the next city commission meeting just so happens to be this Monday at 7 o'clock, third floor of City Hall. 7 o'clock, this Monday. I'll be there.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you.